So good afternoon everyone, it's Sharon here from Climate Action North, and we have the next episode of our Let's Talk Nature and Climate series. And today I am delighted to be talking to Natasha Stromberg, who is a friend of mine I first met on LinkedIn, and we've known each other a few years now, and we also did the Time Is Now rally in London, which is the first time I ever got to meet Natasha in person, which was really good. So welcome Natasha, how are you?
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for that. Yes, I'm fine. I'm in Toronto. It has been extremely hot, but things are good here in Canada, and I'm looking forward to talking to you and your audience today.
Right, so obviously you've moved, yes, we know.
Yeah.
You were living just outside London, weren't you? And I think we were trying to do some work together around ecotherapy, and I know that you are doing a lot of work about wellness as well. So perhaps you could tell us a little bit about, what you're doing at the moment and how your business is progressing as well in Canada.
Yeah, sure. So I am a wellness therapist, expert, and also a coach with a background in psychotherapy. And I have been working on the idea really that wellness, the wellness of the environment and the wellness of our planet is inextricably linked to our own human wellness. And really my wellness philosophy and business is founded on that our relationship with nature is a symbiotic one. And when nature is unwell, i.e. we have air pollution, our rivers are polluted, we can't get the right drinking water. And even when we talk about things like global heating, then when our planet is not well, we are not well. So that's really the basis of the work that I do, in the wellness space and the environmental space.
So I think, when we're talking about wellness, we were thinking about ecotherapy the other day as well. Obviously there's lots of things going on around ecotherapy. We ourselves at Climate Action North, we run a form of ecotherapy, but there's much more involved in ecotherapy, Natasha, isn't there?
Yeah, so I mean, I think ecotherapy as a term has become quite popularized. In Canada, interestingly enough, it's called EcoHealth. There is an organization here in Ontario called EcoHealth Ontario, which is very much that. It is about providing green spaces and a good and healthy environment that actually matches human health. So here it seems to be called EcoHealth, but ecotherapy was originated in the States, in California, like most alternative therapies, let's say, in the 90s. And it was really based on eco-psychology and this idea that I've just spoken about, that our mental health in particular, and physical health, but mental health is greatly benefited by being in nature, but not only just being in nature, having this deep connection to nature. So I think for someone like me who is actually a qualified coach, a psychotherapy coach, it is, when we talk about therapy, really what therapy is a healing of say an ailment, but yes, a therapeutic tool or therapeutic treatment is a healing treatment and remedy. So ecotherapy, people say, oh yes, I'm going for a walk in the woods for a bit of ecotherapy. That's not strictly speaking true. That's kind of a mood booster. Yes, it does make us feel good, but I did an interview with a lady called Jess Bailey, who runs the Centre for Ecotherapy in Brighton, and she made a very interesting point. Therapy is something where there is a transformation from one state to another, and that's true of all psychotherapy. It's a reframing of a state of mind from one state of mind to another, and ecotherapy in its more studied form is that it is a transformation of a state of mind. And we talk about being in nature makes us happy, but actually using nature as a therapy is to use it in a transformative way.
Yeah, so obviously when you're working with people, when you're doing your ecotherapy and your wellness and your consultancy and the business that you do with you know, working with people with issues, you find that is a real good positive outcome, I suppose, just encouraging people to do more stuff. I mean, are you doing any work with people like the social prescribing people as well? You know, when it's actually becoming a term, it's actually becoming a solution, isn't it, to a therapeutic need? Yeah.
It absolutely is. Social prescribing globally is being pioneered by the NHS in the UK. And I'm quite proud of that, being British, and it is being rolled out. And gardening is one of the social prescription activities that you can do. Gardening and also sort of horticulture in a wider sense. And that is sort of supervised, and it's when ecotherapy is prescribed, it's much more of a sort of, on the basis that it's a very mindful activity. It's a way that you can park the ideas or the thoughts that are going around in your mind and really focus on you know, planting something, growing something. And it's really that act of mindfulness which is the key to ecotherapy. It's focusing on a task so that your mind feels relaxed. It's looking at things, it's touching things. There's a lot of relaxation involved in sensory relaxation when you touch leaves, you touch plants. Also, when you see greenery, there's a lot of scientific evidence that humans are actually hardwired to find what we call fractal patterns very therapeutic, because we evolved to see those patterns in nature. Also, green is a color which we find very therapeutic. So that is the basis of ecotherapy, and social prescribing has recognized that. And here in Canada, interestingly enough, Ontario Health is the only province, they call them here, that is looking at social prescribing at the moment as a solution in Canada. And they are working with the NHS, inspired by the NHS and what they're doing. So I'm hoping to see the social prescribing of ecotherapy become a reality here in Canada. But at the moment, it's in a pilot stage.
That's incredible, really, though, isn't it? I think it's nice to think that we have recognize this. I know it's been around a long time. I mean, I know I worked in a sector where it was about you know, it was called green gyms then. It was about, you know, getting people outside into nature and maybe doing exercise and linking it back to therapy and stuff. But I think to have an actual organization like the NHS taking it on board and running with a pilot and trialing it, it's quite amazing, really, isn't it, if we could get that recognized? Because I expect it could also help things like climate anxiety as well, which, you know, we all suffer from working in our typical sector. So I suppose that the links are really good there as well, aren't they? So I mean, in terms of what you do, Natasha, what got you into, you know, working in psychotherapy, ecotherapy and wellness? What drove you to do that? Is it just an interest?
I mean, I worked in the corporate sector for a long time, and I think I say this on my website. I found people's behaviours quite interesting, and I always saw that successful companies really had people running them who were very in tune with psychology. And I got very interested in coaching, first of all, and mentoring. So I decided to study for a coaching qualification, and that is really what opened me up to the sort of formal study of psychotherapy, and how many of the things or the issues that we have in life can be addressed with psychotherapy, but that we're not taught at school. We're not taught about our emotions. We're not taught about behaviors. We're just taught sort of how to get a job. But human life really is based on how we communicate, how we feel. So that's, I got interested in psychology, I think, when I was working in the corporate sector. And as I became more involved with it, obviously I started looking at different therapies. Obviously talking therapy is the number one thing that psychotherapists use, and I use that as well. There are certain techniques which I enjoy using, but I think I realized that if you are well in your mind, then you're well in your body. And I started, as I was studying more and more, to make that connection. I'd had a skiing accident, and I had a displaced disc, a bulging disc, and I had the pain for ages and ages, even though the disc was fine. And I kept going to see doctors, and they just, in the end, they said, a doctor said to me, there's a lot of study now on chronic pain that shows that, and this is pain that was around for 2 years, but he was healed. And there's a lot of evidence that shows that the mind is actually controlling the chronic pain. And I just got really interested in everything to do with mind body wellness, and how to, I'll say cure yourself, but some of the things, you know, that aren't treatable medically with either surgery or medication. I started to look into that and how effective they would be. And that's really what led me onto this path. I've always been interested in being, you know, healthy, going to the gym. You know, I was a vegetarian for a long time. All of those things, loved gardening, and it just all came into one, I suppose. And I decided to really make wellness the focus of my coaching business.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I remember as well, you know, obviously following you on LinkedIn, as we do, because we keep in touch that way,
Yeah.
that you actually, the first thing you did, I remember when you moved to Toronto, where you are now, was that you started a garden, didn't you?
I did, because we live, I mean, when I lived in Britain, we had a lovely big garden, which I also adored. But we moved to Toronto, we live in the city, so obviously gardens are pretty small. We have a deck, and it was quite bare. It just had sort of palms in it, and it was a bit depressing, really. So I sort of set to work. I said to my husband, I'm gonna make a garden. So I did, and it has been such a great pleasure, because it is hot here. The Toronto summers are very hot, and to have that greenery, I mean, my tomato plants are unbelievable. I mean, there were a few tiny plants. They are now everywhere, like a massive vine, and it provides that green wall. Not only is it cooler, but it's also visually much more relaxing to look out on a green wall, rather than just plain sort of, even though it's a beautiful deck, it's wooden, but seeing that greenery, it just lifts the spirits, and I enjoy it. I mean, I had to clean my nails actually before doing this. I've been sort of rummaging around doing some stuff in the garden. Seeing what works and what doesn't work is also massively rewarding. You know, learning about plants is something that I find that therapeutic. You know, and when my plants don't flower or they die, I get quite upset. I'm like, don't you like it here? You know, and I think that idea of connecting with something that is living, plants can offer that. Obviously, we know animals are very responsive to us, but I think when you do start to care for plants, you do become quite in tune with what they need. It sounds, I mean, I know Prince Charles said he always talked to his plants, but I sometimes do. I mean, I'm touching this leaf now, this is a beautiful fern, and I've often, I do touch them, because the plants do need to be touched. So yeah, I've set up a garden. I've got a few house plants. I'd like to get more.
Yeah, I remember you telling me as well that obviously it's a bit like the tree syndrome, isn't it? You know, the network of trees, that the plants actually can talk to each other as well. They can communicate, which sounds absolutely sensible. You know, if you've got a couple of plants, because I think I remember saying that I had one house plant, and I was encouraged to get another one to
Yes.
next to it, because we thought it would give it a bit of, you know, that communication. And it's perfectly sensible, because that is the same, you know, the tree network is very similar, isn't it? So
that's right. I mean, you know, the more we discover about plants and the more we open our minds and our eyes to the fact that all living things on planet Earth have their own communities. You know, we tend to think of as humans that everything else is inanimate, but it isn't. You know, trees talk to each other via their own hormones, you know, in the air, and they trade those signals. Just because it's a language we don't understand or can't quantify doesn't mean to say that it's not a language. You know, we as humans are very human centric, and we tend to think, oh well, they don't speak to each other. Well, no, they don't speak the human language, but they have their own communication tools. And more people are beginning to, in the mainstream, to understand that. And it's really key that we do understand that in order to protect what we have here, and in order to nurture both ourselves and plants. Plants are key to our health. You know, we need the oxygen they provide, we need them to take up the CO2, they cool the environment, they provide us with so much health benefits. I mean, understanding how plants communicate to each other is very important.
yeah, I also think as well that, you know, going back to the plants, I suppose, I mean, I think that I recall the conversation that we had as well last time I met you in London. We were talking about, well, we were hoping to get something off the ground, weren't we, before you left, and what you were saying you were leaving. It was about the workshops to get offices and businesses thinking about, you know, indoor, bringing the plant life indoors to actually get that benefit. Like you say, it's about, you know, absorbing the CO2 that's in the office, and cooling areas, and having plants actually in offices, which you don't see a lot of these days, do you really? Not something that a lot of offices have.
I think, I mean, there's been a lot of studies that shown that offices with plants in them have more productive employees. That they have shown. That there was a study in Holland that showed that, and putting plants in offices creates an atmosphere, a more creative atmosphere, and a calmer atmosphere. And it's called Biophilic Design. There's actually a name for it. So biophilia means love of anything that's living. I mean, this is plants, and you know, there are fewer plants now in offices because people have been cost cutting. But I think it's really important to understand that as humans, we need not just plastic around us, we need living things. We are alive, and it's very calming to have a plant. You can look after them. We also have a need to nurture, and often at work, we're not encouraged to nurture, let's say in the corporate world, and plants provide that nurturing. And it is important to have plants in offices, and yeah, have some indoor ecotherapy. I mean, actually, I worked in an office where somebody was taking care of an orchid, and the orchid was dying, well, because it didn't have the right conditions. It's very dry in those, you know, it was fully air conditioned, and they were pretty upset about the fact that it was dying. I mean, orchids I find difficult to care for anyway. But yes, we can focus on indoor ecotherapy in the winter, you know, because, you know, at the moment, yes, you can get out into your garden, you can touch your plants. I mean, I'm pretty much someone who goes out all weathers all year round, and I'm sure in Canada it's going to be freezing, but there will be a beauty in that. There is a beauty in the winter, but if you can't get out, then, you know, house plants are a good way to keep that therapeutic connection with something that's alive. And we need that, we need it. And I think the more that people understand that, I mean, people get obsessed with houseplants, and it's easy to see why.
Yeah, you know, when you first moved there as well, Natasha, because obviously we follow each other on social media, you told me and you showed me actually videos that you'd taken of the neighbourhood. I mean, the neighbourhood looks absolutely amazing, because there is so much greenery there, isn't there, where you live now? Is that completely different to where you were before then in England?
Yeah, so we live in pretty much, I would say not downtown, but we live in a neighborhood in Toronto. And I was shocked by how green the neighborhood is and how people cultivate or use their front gardens. They are magnificent. I must do some more videos. I've done a series of videos called the Front Gardens of Toronto. And what struck me was the amount of trees, mature trees, and we're in a central neighborhood, so we are not in the sort of leafy suburbs. We are in a central neighborhood. The amount of mature trees, one in people's gardens, which are not huge, these front gardens, but they are packed with trees, flowers, ferns. And what I noticed is there are very few paved over front gardens. And where I lived in the UK, I lived in Watford, I would say that at least 75% of front gardens were paved over to park four cars, 3-4 cars. And every time I went for a walk in my neighborhood, someone else was digging up their front garden, either to put down AstroTurf or to put down, which is plastic, or to park more cars on. Now, obviously, in a more central neighborhood, you don't need a car as much. We don't have a car, so we sold our car and now we have 2 bikes. So we don't have a car. But I've noticed that people don't park their cars in their gardens. And also they have a lot of these front porches where you sit on the front porch and you look over your front garden and you can chat to people coming by. So I mean, I've been so impressed with the front gardens here. People grow a lot of their own food as well in the gardens. I've seen that. Yeah, I mean, it's noticeably cooler when we cycle from into our area because of the trees. And that's going to become much more necessary as global heating takes hold, because my goodness, it has been really hot here.
Yeah, I think that's been the case all over Europe as well. We've had some incredibly insane temperatures at the moment. We've been quite lucky here that we had the warm weather, but then we've gone back to what we would expect to be a reasonably cooler temperature. But that is a worry. It is a worry. But it's good to hear that, you know, the neighbourhood that you're in now is taking that sort of green area and that green benefits quite seriously, because that would be sequestering carbon as well, and obviously cooling down the atmosphere, which is really nice to see. I wish there were more places like that, to be honest, because it is quite frustrating seeing it here as well. You know, we see all the paving being put down. We've got nowhere for that water to go. There's nowhere for flood water to go now that they're building on such, you know, on such important areas, really. So I suppose in terms of your business then, because obviously you've moved into a new area, I suppose you've probably got quite a different or a wider target audience, I expect, then, you know, than what you had before. Is that something that's working out quite well for you, Natasha? You're still developing your roots there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still just in the sort of getting to know people stage and finding out what the wellness world looks like here. So I've joined some webinars, obviously on the social prescribing side. I've made some good contacts to find out what's happening there. Obviously, we are on the large North American continent. I mean, Canada has about, I think, just over 30 million people. But obviously in the States, you've got about 340 million consumers. So it's really, yes, there are a lot more consumers of wellness services on the North American continent who speak English as their first language, let's say, than there would be in the UK. I mean, the UK is one country, English-speaking country, and so the market here is wider. But interestingly enough, like I say, the UK is leading on things like social prescribing of ecotherapy. So I do think there are benefits of being British, because in some ways, Britain is further ahead on social prescribing, but I think generally North America is much more open to psychotherapy, psychology, and the idea of mind-body wellness is accepted here. It's accepted, and people do have, let's say, a more open mind and open heart to the idea of wellness. So I think, you know, obviously I'm in the very early stages here. It takes a while to get to know people, and with COVID I haven't really been able to get out and meet people. I can only do, you know, and people do want to see who you are when you end up in a new place. So I think there will be lots of fantastic opportunities in North America, but I will still keep that British connection, because I think there's some great work going on in the UK as well. Hopefully can bridge both.
Absolutely. I mean, we will still work together as well. I mean, I think we've all still got that community on LinkedIn as well, and everyone is still interested in everything that you do, and we certainly are, because obviously we could pick up on some of the discussions that we were talking about before you left. And I suppose lockdown, we can get into lockdown and COVID-19 situation, and I expect a lot of people, it'll be the same there as what it has been here. A lot of people have established that connection with nature. They've re-established, I suppose, the connection with nature, because they've been forced to do nothing else really and stay at home. And, you know, lots of people have discovered or rediscovered their gardens, and so they are actually making that connection. So I think really it's quite a good opportunity, isn't it, for you to sort of promote the services that you have based on the natural environment and working with the natural environment as a result of the lockdown, really. I suppose it's kind of that strange circumstances, isn't it, that have led us into being able to sort of work in an environment that we've always done, but more people are accepting of it, like you say, you know.
I think you know, these ideas, so things like, you know, biophilia, fractal patterns, being very attracted and soothed by patterns on leaves, greenery, the color green. These people know they feel better in nature, but often don't know why. And I think we are going to see a rise of the scientific research connecting with people's actual experiences, and that needs to happen on a, let's say, semi-medical level, and I think COVID-19 has been useful for that, because what have people reached for? Yes, they've reached for gardening, they've reached for planting their own, growing their own food. That's another key part of my wellness philosophy, is when you understand where your food comes from, that kind of the idea that the earth nourishes you and you nourish the earth, that symbiotic relationship really establishes itself in food growing. I mean, I watch Gardener's World, and I know that their viewing went through the roof in Britain. So I do think that COVID-19 has shown people probably what we already know. This is not new. We know this deep down. And I think it's just having the time actually to be able to connect with our inner selves, and maybe have the time to be more reflective about things that make us happy, and not being able to just go out to restaurants and bars and sort of use that as our happiness quota or entertainment quota, and actually saying, do you know what, I'm just as happy in my garden, or planting my carrots, or I'm getting that kind of soul nourishment, let's call it what it is, from something I didn't maybe expect to. And there's a deeper connection going on there, and a deeper and probably more long-lasting connection. I mean, it's great to socialize, don't get me wrong, but I think the pace as well of lockdown has enabled us to just take the time to reflect on what makes us feel good.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's been a horrendous situation for lots of people and for everyone really. I just think it's been one of those very, very challenging times for everyone. But I think the only solace has been that people have rediscovered stuff and have started thinking about the natural world a little bit more. So, I mean, going back to the natural world as well and some of the therapy side, I think we had a conversation once about, you know, you were talking about forest bathing as well. Is that something that you're hoping to sort of develop into as well, or is it something you already do?
So I haven't actually delivered any practical forest bathing courses. I was going to do that before I left the UK, and I was talking to actually my local council about delivering that. But obviously I moved and we've been in lockdown ever since. So things are only just opening up here. Forest bathing, for anyone who's listening, I mean, you may have heard the term. I kind of talk about it, I refer to it as forest therapy. Again, if we can talk a little bit about the therapeutic benefits, I think it helps people. Forest bathing is the English translation of a Japanese term called shirin-yoku. And there is, like many Japanese words, there isn't really a very accurate English term. I mean, bathing to us always, or to Westerners, involves water. So people think they might have to go, you know, in their swimming costumes, lie in a forest and, you know, don't really know what it entails, or take their clothes off. And what it really is using the forest environment as a therapeutic setting, so that as a remedy for mainly stress, anxiety, depression, and for things like you know, heart disease, because of the atmosphere. And that is something I would like to get into in Canada. Obviously the forests here are just incredible. Canada is still one of the most forested countries in the world. So there are plenty of forests to do forest bathing. It would be great to set up a wellness centre where the forest bathing, we could do forest bathing. That's something that in the future I'd love to do. Obviously with physical distancing, outdoors now is seeming a great place to be doing that, because the indoor settings, therapeutic settings, are more difficult now. So the outdoor settings are going to be key, I think, in the wellness industry. So I'd love to set up a some kind of forest medicine environment. So let's see what happens. Yeah, I think it would be great, because, you know, in Japan, forest bathing or forest therapy has been a mainstay of social prescribing, let's say, or medical prescribing since the 1980s. So doctors in Japan do prescribe forest therapy to, I think it's over 2 million Japanese people a year. So, and they actually have a research center, a medical research center, in one of the forests not far out of Tokyo. And I think we are going to see more of this sort of medicinal side. And they work for the University of Tokyo. I mean, people tend to think that a lot of these therapies are studied by people who are not scientists, but these are scientifically proven therapies for things like alleviating stress, lowering blood pressure, lowering cortisol levels, which obviously we all need because that can lead to long-term heart disease, reducing anxiety, and also, you know, boosting immunity. There's something called terpenes that particularly cedar forests emit, and particularly in the summer, that have been shown to boost killer cells in our immune system. And that is a known fact. And I'd like to see, you know, us using the resources we have in nature for our own health. We need to be mainstreaming these ideas, because many of the medicinal treatments for things like depression, anxiety, have not been proven to be effective over the long term. You know, some of the medications that are given have been proven to be no more effective than a placebo. So we do need to look at, and, you know, with mental health really being the challenge of the 21st century for 21st century humans, we need to be seriously looking at say alternative therapies, we need to broaden our mind into, you know, different therapeutic remedies for things like depression, anxiety, even heart disease.
I think that's fantastic. I really do. I like the idea of the whole of the I mean, it's a natural world as well. It's always there. It's, you know, it's everywhere. We are actually just part of nature, aren't we? We're just one little tiny sort of part of a full ecosystem. So I think it makes perfect sense for us to be absorbed in that world rather than trying to take it over, you know, that kind of thought pattern. So I suppose, you know, my last question would be, you know, what is the first thing you're looking forward to? I suppose it's post lockdown. Obviously you're in your new home now and you've got your sort of new opportunity to find out more about your work and everything and what you can do. Is there one specific thing that you're really looking forward to doing?
I suppose, like anyone, I'd like to actually meet some of the people that I have been connecting with online here in Canada. I know before I came and before COVID, one of my contacts here said, oh, you know, I'm going to get a group of women together and we, you know, to support you in your move, which I thought was lovely. And we'll put our heads together about, you know, how we can help you professionally, and we can meet up in Toronto in a bar or hotel. You know what? Of course, that didn't happen. So I think really, of course, online meeting is great, but there is no substitute for physically meeting people. So I think for me, just getting out into Toronto life will be great for me, and meeting some of those women that I've met online. I think that's what, and being actually able to go outside. I mean, we have been able to drive around Ontario for a while now. Like I say, we don't have a car, but we can hire a car. And I think I'd like to go to some of those amazing parks, you know, that they have here. There's a dark sky reserve not that far from Toronto. And I think the amazing beauty that is around, not far from the city of Toronto. I'm looking forward to having a drive out to some of those areas too.
And you're a bit of a rewilder like me as well, aren't you? You're a big fan of rewilding, so you're going to enjoy getting into those big wide open spaces, I imagine, as well, which Canada will have a lot of.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you don't appreciate, I think, when you come from a small country like England, is how vast Canada is. And even Ontario, I mean, it's the size of half of Europe. It's immense. And in Northern Ontario, you know, there's hardly anybody there. So being able to access places where there are much fewer people is very nice. And you do notice how less densely populated even Toronto is. So yeah, I am a fan of rewilding. I am sick of concrete, probably like lots of people, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the Canadian wilderness has to offer, because I'm sure it's just breathtaking.
I'm sure it'll be absolutely amazing. You'll have to keep us up to date with what you're up to as well. We'll be following the blogs and everything. It's been an absolute pleasure, Natasha. It's been great to hear about what what you're doing in your new home and everything, and where you live now, and the business that you're developing. And of course, we will keep in touch, because we still have you as our UK ecotherapy expert. So we'll still be coming back to you for information on that. So yeah, I mean, wish you all the very best of luck with your projects, and you know, when you can actually get out and about and meet people in Toronto post lockdown. And yeah, I mean, we'll keep in touch. So thank you so much for coming on the program today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. And yes, I mean, I am working with people in the UK still, and I want to keep that connection. And, you know, hopefully we can do a bit of a UK-Canada bridge. And I think it benefits some of my connections in the UK to hear about what's happening in Canada. You know, it's a good swap of information for everyone, because it just broadens everybody's horizons when, you know, you can see what's happening internationally, and hopefully I can continue working, you know, with the UK and in Canada as well.
Excellent. I love that. Yeah, we will definitely watch this space. Okay, so we'll see you later then, Natasha. Do you take care?
Thank you, Sharon. Thanks for your time today, and thank you, everybody.